When we began to talk about what's going to happen next, who are in this internet field were saying with fingers crossed, please let us keep our minister, please let us keep our minister. So great delight to be able to have kept our minister who knows, understands and believes in so many of the things, the purpose, the principles that underpin what we talk about here. So as probably, at least if not number one fan, at least up there with the rest, I'm really pleased to be able to ask the Minister to come forward and give his keynote address, a man who knows, understands and can make sense of things and take what we say into rooms we can't get into and be heard. I give you the Minister.
Well, Rennie, thank you very much. I'm blown away. It says in the speech that's been written for me, many thanks for that kind introduction, but I had no idea it was going to be so fulsome. I was a bit nervous when you started, saying I don't know how you lot voted, but I was worried you might go on and say, but if you didn't vote Labour, it's your fault that we've still got Ed Vaizey as the Minister. Although I have perhaps arrogantly taken to opening my speeches by saying, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted by the general election, I was delighted to keep my job because it's a job that I find absolutely fascinating. I cover quite a wide spectrum, but internet governance and the issues it throws up is, I think, one of the most important issues that I work on. And I work with Rennie, and I've worked with her for many years. We got to know each other when I was still in opposition as well, and also, obviously, with Nominet, who've been absolutely fantastic. Both in assisting me with my agenda, but also in terms of the work Nominet does across the piece. And Nominet is always not only does fantastic work, not just Nominet, but also the foundation as well, but also provides sage advice and also continues to innovate under your chairmanship. And the final icing on the cake, I guess, of my relationship with Nominet is that they've given me the chance to speak at Chatham House. For 100 years, this institution has been gearing up for this moment. You know, a few presidents here and there, the odd prime minister, but now you've got me, so that's great. But also, talking about anniversaries, so this is the 10th anniversary of the Global Internet Governance Forum, and it's going to be hosted in Brazil in November, so that's another reason to hold on to your jobs, where we will look back on the last 10 years of the IGF. So quite a lot of people in this room were there in 2005 at the conclusion of the World Summit on the Information Society, the WSIS, in Tunis, where the concept of a multi-stakeholder internet governance forum as a place for broad-based discussion involving a wide range of different stakeholders was formed, and it was seen as a sort of experimental or radical idea. A few people thought it might never take off. Some people thought it would just become a talking shop that achieved little and fizzled out. And a lot of people assumed that the UN would gradually take over. And 10 years on, it seems inconceivable that I think the mark of the success of what happened in 2005 is that 10 years on in 2015, we probably now think it's inconceivable that we didn't have a forum that brought people together for constructive debate, gave them the opportunity to share information, and brought together the range of different stakeholders that are here today at the UK IGF. Obviously representatives of business, but also obviously equally importantly civil society, the technical community, politicians and academics. And it says here my own government policy experts, who are obviously the most important. You work together as people best equipped to advocate the best practices, seize the opportunities, resolve the problems, and set the future direction of the internet. And I also think the track record of the last 10 years demonstrates that this open and inclusive multi-stakeholder approach is the one that best promotes innovation, and it creates the economic and social opportunities in step with the very rapid technology changes that are transforming our economy and our way of life. So this is the model of the governance of the internet that we're going to defend in the UN in New York later this year, when the implementation of the outcomes of the 2005 WSIS review will be looked at. And the review will cover many areas of action to extend the information society to as many people as possible, and to ensure that information and communication technology contributes to sustainable development. There's a huge amount of work still to be done, of course, to bridge that digital divide, and we hope that the WSIS agenda for 2016 onwards will focus on that. On the issue of processes and mechanisms, I think we can reflect on how the IGF concept has not only succeeded, I think, in achieving the ambitions set for it in 2005, but also how it's been embedded at many different levels. Because, of course, in addition to the global IGF, we also have regional fora, and we also have national fora. And, of course, the UK IGF was one of the first national IGFs in 2008, and since then there's been a proliferation of similar national processes and multi-stakeholder events. And we in the UK always saw the UK IGF as being a process that would link people up, have events, provide networking opportunities and the opportunity to share experiences and ideas. And in fact, the UK IGF was originally conceived as giving the opportunity both for UK stakeholders to come together, gearing up for the annual global IGF, but also for UK stakeholders to then disseminate what emerged from the UK IGF to the wider UK community. And this year, more than in previous years, these link-ups have been reinforced as part of the overall strengthening of the IGF. And the theme of the global IGF this year, as you know, is the evolution of internet governance, empowering sustainable development. And linked to this is a call for inputs from national and regional IGFs on policy options on how to connect the next billion people. There's also, of course, the opportunity for UK stakeholders to contribute to a lot of different forums in Brazil. There'll be issues such as combating spam, there'll be IPv6 transition, establishing CSIRTs, computer security incident response teams, and also enhancing multi-stakeholder mechanisms such as advisory groups working at the heart of government policy formulation. And that's an approach that you'll hear today in one of the workshop sessions that we've adopted with our multi-stakeholder advisory group on internet governance, the MAGI. And the WSIS Plus 10 review in the UN is one of two major developments that's going to be the focus for the internet community this year. And the other, of course, is the IANA stewardship transition and the future of ICANN's operation of functions relating to the root zone, the top level of the domain name system, currently performed, as you know, by ICANN under contract to the US government. This is all changing, of course, and in what is the final key step in globalizing the coordination of the domain name system. And it's a process that I've supported fully since it got underway. ICANN was asked by the US government's National Telecommunications and Information Administration just over a year ago to set up a multi-stakeholder process to devise a new architecture of oversight, management, independent review and accountability for the IANA functions. How has this process gone? I think, again, the answers exceeded our expectations. The response by stakeholders who volunteered their time to help develop the proposal has been absolutely fantastic. And also I applaud the two co-chairs of the process, particularly concerning the especially complex IANA naming functions. They're Jonathan Robinson, who's the executive chairman of the domain name registry Affilias, and Lisa Fur of the Danish Internet Forum. There's a hugely complex range of issues surrounding the naming functions, and this part of the process has obviously taken longer than perhaps originally envisaged. But Jonathan and Lisa have navigated the complexities, they've marshalled the inputs, the ideas, they've suggested solutions with a great deal of diligence and effectiveness over the last year, and of course it has been a very very tight timeline. And they and members of their cross-community working group have done a tremendous job in producing a single proposal for transition, and I know that Nominet is closely involved in this crucial process as well. The proposal has just been published, and we discussed at the ICANN public, and it's going to be discussed at the ICANN public meeting next week in Buenos Aires. So the process, as I said, is taking slightly longer than envisaged, but it is broadly still on track. I don't think governments working together, by the way, could have done so much in such a tight time frame. I think this whole process has yet again shown how the multi-stakeholder approach of bringing people together, bringing experts from all quarters, not just government, business, civil society, the technical experts, can actually achieve concrete results very quickly and very effectively. So it is actually a model that we could adopt in many different areas. I've talked a lot about the global context within which this meeting of the UK IGF sits, and I did want to talk a little at the end of my speech about our own priorities for national internet policy. As you know, we're engaged at the moment in building out the UK's digital infrastructure. We want to build broadband out so that as many people as possible have access to superfast speeds. We want that to be complemented by much broader mobile coverage. We want to educate our young citizens, children at school, in coding, and we want to give people the skills to take part in the digital economy that the internet makes possible. We want to combat digital exclusion. We want as many people as possible to be able to get online in the UK as well. We've also obviously focused as well on protecting children on the internet. So we've pioneered, along with organisations like Nominet and obviously the Internet Watch Foundation, the kind of child safety measures that make a big difference. We set up, the last Labour government set up the UK Council for Child Internet Safety, which has been a fantastic organisation to push forward self-regulatory approaches, and again, another example of a forum that brings together expertise from a wide range of people. So I know that you're going to have a session today with the Internet Watch Foundation that's going to look at what's happened since the We Protect Summit, and will consider the role and responsibilities of all the relevant actors in a global multi-stakeholder environment. The other big domestic policy issue, as it were, that is actually taking place at a European level is the issue of net neutrality. As you know, a net neutrality directive forms part of the telecom singles market package, and we've been negotiating with the Commission, the European Parliament, and other member states on this for nearly 2 years. I think net neutrality is a more controversial subject than perhaps some people think. Some people think net neutrality is motherhood and apple pie, but it's very important, I think, to get the balance. Thank you very much indeed. Ensuring that we have an open internet and ensuring that telecoms companies can invest in their infrastructure, and also that the market has room to innovate. But we pioneered in the UK a code of conduct on net neutrality, which I'm pleased to say now all the telcos and major telcos and operators, mobile operators have signed up to. I like to think that that code of conduct helped form the basis for the proposed European directive. But net neutrality is important, and it's important to many of the member states in the European Union, who have perhaps different but no less valid reasons for wanting to see net neutrality taken forward. But it is also important, I think, to be aware of the occasional downside to what we're negotiating. And we have fought absolutely to ensure that there's room for innovation, absolutely that there's room for consumer protection, as well as the opportunity for regulators to intervene where necessary, and most importantly, that the Net Neutrality Directive doesn't inadvertently, in my view, push back some of the pioneering child protection policies that we've put in place in the UK. But I'm confident that my fellow ministers and fellow parliamentarians in other member states will listen to our concerns, because they know that fundamentally our heart is in the right place as far as net neutrality is concerned. I wish everyone here an enjoyable rest of the day. It's thoroughly good to be here. It's very nice to see some old friends in the room, and it's nice to know, for example, particularly to see Malcolm Harbour demonstrating that there is life after politics. I look to you, Malcolm, as my inspiration for when things don't go as well as they did a few months ago. Thank you very much indeed.
We have 10 minutes for questions. So if a lot was talked about this morning about the government supporting this, government taking forward that, and so on. And so some of the insurance industry stuff was very interesting this morning. Are we all aware of it? But I open it up for, please put up your hand and again, say who you are, and one straight here, and your question.
Thank you. Oscar O'Connor. I'm an independent consultant, but also involved with the Information Assurance Advisory Council and the Cybersecurity Challenge. I was very interested that, Minister, you mentioned IP version 6 for the first time today, and the need for adoption, particularly with a conversation about the Internet of Things coming up this afternoon. Previously, various observers, myself amongst them, have been somewhat disappointed by the UK's progress in adopting IPv6, and it was interesting to note that Apple announced this week, or late last week, that no new applications would be accepted onto their App Store unless they were IPv6 compliant. Given the comment earlier that the Internet of Things in your home is likely to be controlled through an Apple device, does that kind of initiative from one of the leviathans of the Internet maybe add a little more pressure on government and the internet service providers in this country to frankly pull their finger out on IPv6?
Now, don't hold your punches, Oscar. Say what you really mean. Thank you.
Well, we discuss IPv6 every year when I come to the UK IGF, and as you know, I normally give a mealy-mouthed answer, so why change the habit of a lifetime? When I became a minister, we had a very small fund, and we had, I think it's called 6 UK, promoting IPv6. But that fell away, and I do regularly row back to my officials and ask if there's a problem with IPv6. And so far, actually, there hasn't been evidence that we're falling behind or that we're not adopting IPv6 as and when it's appropriate. And to a certain extent, this process will be led by businesses, particularly some of the large businesses, and actually an intervention such as the one you mentioned by Apple is much more likely to push the adoption of IPv6 than government. I do think government needs to get ahead of the curve, obviously, in adopting IPv6, and I will check with the Government Digital Service what we're doing, but I think the government was also flogging a lot of IPv4 addresses, which is one of the reasons why it didn't particularly want IPv6 to be accelerated, perhaps, before it had flogged all the IPv4 addresses it had on its books to help reduce the deficit. So, but I hear what you say, and it is a subject that I am very interested in and will continue, as it were, to ensure that we stand ready to promote IPv6 as and when it's right for government to intervene. But so far, a compelling case has not been put to me that government does need to intervene in the transition process in the UK.
We have 3 hands up over here, starting with Andrew Puddifat, and thank you. Andrew?
Thanks, Andrew Puddifat from Global Partners. Minister, I welcome your commitment to providing superfast broadband throughout Britain and mobile and better mobile phone signal. I lose my mobile phone signal in Oxford Street pretty regularly. When I go to Norfolk, it's virtually non-existent in whole areas of the county. And when you compare our broadband speeds with what's available in Japan and Korea or in the Chinese 5-year plan, it seems to me we're not doing very well. What's your honest assessment of how Britain is doing in the adoption of superfast broadband and providing decent, adequate mobile signals throughout the country, which is crucial to our economy, compared particularly to our some of the Asian countries, and seem to me doing far, far better than us?
So we have a lot to thank Norfolk for, because as well as you not getting a signal, I think the Prime Minister couldn't get a signal in Norfolk. And the process of interviews without coffee with the mobile operators began then. I think the superfast broadband, I shouldn't laugh at my own joke, should I? The superfast broadband rollout is going well, I think. I think we compare with the big five. So obviously if you compare us to Malta or Iceland, we're not as good. But if you compare us to Germany, France, Spain or Italy, we're actually ahead of them in terms of superfast broadband. I live in a world where everyone I meet seems to have rubbish broadband in the UK, and then when they go on a walking holiday in Outer Mongolia, they suddenly seem to have 1 gig when they visit a small, out-of-the-way farmhouse. But so a lot of this is based on anecdote. But the process is going very well in terms of superfast broadband, and I think also I know people are concerned, obviously, about the BT monopoly. Don't forget, obviously, BT is open, the network is open to competitors, but also I think the announcement by Virgin Media that's going to invest $3 billion over the next 4 years is a welcome testament to the kind of hunger of consumers to get broadband. I think we have a competitive business market, and I think that also we now see some of the smaller operators, companies like GigaClear, are now coming to the fore. They've started winning some of our broadband contracts for phase 2. That's the 90 to 95% rollout that we're doing. So GigaClear is now getting on board. You're seeing TalkTalk and Sky teaming up with City Fibre as well. So there is, I think, quite a healthy competition market out there. It does take time. It is an engineering project. But I think we are doing well if you compare us to comparative countries. Some of the Asian countries like South Korea, it will always be difficult to catch up with. There are certain elements there like topography and so on that may make a difference. I think on mobile coverage, again, I think I always remind my government peers, that the mobile companies are private companies. They have contributed a significant amount to the Treasury's coffers in terms of purchasing spectrum from government. We can help them, and I think we need to do more to help them to make the planning process much simpler. So we're looking at reforming what is known as the Electronic Communications Code to make that simpler. We've started making government buildings available to mobile operators at market rates, obviously, because we couldn't, otherwise it would be illegal state aid, but we make them available with a uniform rate. So hopefully the process is simple for them. We're trialling that in central London at the moment, and we hope to roll that out nationwide as well. So we have to actively help mobile operators where we can on planning and things like that. But it is frustrating for people. And again, if you talk, it's very difficult always to and I'm not trying to be not denigrating what you say, but obviously it's always difficult when you talk about people's personal user experience, because there are a range of factors that come into play. We all know that the smartphone aerial is not as good as it were in terms of voice calls. People sometimes get an old phone off eBay partly for retro fashion reasons, but actually because it's got a longer battery life and it's a better antenna for a voice call. We know that Oxford Street is congested in terms of the amount of people probably using their smartphones, plus it's an alleyway with high walls on either side. Norfolk is difficult in the sense that obviously the mobile companies will invest initially where they are first, where they're likely to turn a profit. But I do know in terms of 4G rollout, we again are competing very well, and I think we started our 4G rollout, I think 2 years after Germany, and I'm told that we've overtaken them in terms of coverage.
It's a very comprehensive answer. We have 2 further questions. I'll take them both at the same time after you finish.
What really means is I went on too long.
No. And then we have from Vicky, and then the Minister will answer both, we hope.
Minister, thank you for coming today.
I'm David Michel, I'm a volunteer for the British Computer Society. I have seen several colleagues go to Switzerland now because of the UK's view on cryptography. In 2007, Steve Jobs, the former Apple man, went on record to describe the fair play system. He negotiated a deal with 3 ongoing thoughts that I'm sure you can't discuss here. The rights and needs for cryptography, even at a strong level, because I don't want to see any more businesses go to Switzerland when they could be trading here.
Thank you. Do you want to take Vicky's question?
Yeah.
Popular question.
I feel like I'm asking something much less significant, but I think it is significant. Minister, thank you for coming. I'm Vicky Nash from the Oxford Internet Institute. It was great to hear you mention the age-old chestnut of the digital divide, noting that we're still no nearer to resolving that. But I guess, given that so much research suggests that this is still linked to issues around levels of education, levels of income, and that it's not just about age, I think.
Okay, so British Computer Society does incredibly valuable work. Regard them as an important stakeholder, so we value the work that you do. On the issue of cryptography, and I hope I got the thrust of your question right, the balance between what government sees as important tools to protect our security and businesses using cryptography to protect the privacy of their users. You know that was a controversial issue that arose before the election, based on an interpretation of the Prime Minister's remarks that I thought were slightly unfair. What I would say on it, again, it's a point of principle to protect the privacy of our citizens. But if I draw the parallel to a certain extent with what we've done in terms of protecting children, the point I've made in public before, again and again, is that we can't have this sort of binary approach where if government says we need certain things in order to make our citizens secure, the technology community turns around and they normally say, well, you don't understand the internet, or they attack you for somehow proposing some nightmare Orwellian agenda. What we want is a dialogue, because we have a technology community who also, in their day-to-day lives, are citizens who presumably want the same things we all want, which is to be as safe and secure as possible. And more, we rely as governments on the technology community to help work so well. The reason I'm such a strong supporter of it, and the UK government supports it, is precisely because it gets away from this scenario where government simply says, this is the answer, let's go and do it. We have a dialogue and a process in which we all inform each other. So I hope that, to a certain extent, addresses what I think you were trying to ask. May not. The Oxford Internet Institute, we're also great fans of, so very good to see Vicky here. I think I want to do more on digital inclusion. We are going to have a meeting with a few key stakeholders, so I better get you invited, Vicky, to discuss the sort of next steps. I think to a certain extent it needs refreshing, if that doesn't sound too odd. I think we need to look afresh at what we're doing. I would issue a challenge as well, though, that I think it's important that we get the figures right, as it were. I think it's important that we start on the same page in terms of what we mean by digital exclusion, the numbers when we talk about digital exclusion. I think sometimes the numbers are almost too abstract, and we need to make it more real. And we need to show why it's important, and we need I hope this doesn't sound too odd, we need real life examples. I mean, you talked about NEETs, Vicky, so we need to kind of show in a practical way, I think, how this is done. And I think in a funny way as well, again, we almost always try to kind of solve this agenda on too big a platform. And actually, if you deal with one small community and show the impact that you can have over a few months, I think that would be much more tangible and something that we can then roll out with others. So I want to take a much more innovative and different approach, and I hope, Vicky, you'll be one of the people who helps me do that.
Thank you. Now, before I ask you to formally thank the Minister in the usual way, I want to give you some information because I know you're all going to rush. We've got a coffee break after the Minister, which is in the room we were in upstairs, the Neil Malcolm room. And then after that, we've got 3 parallel workshop sessions, and they start at 12:15. The first is the session on identity and open standards, will be in this main hall here. The explanatory session for newcomers will take place in the Astor room, and someone will show you where that is at coffee. And the final session on multi-stakeholder cooperation will be in the Henry Price room. And after that, after you've had your coffee, you've sorted out where you're going, you come back to the Neil Markham room where lunch will be served. So I'm expecting you to read Mark Glynn and really digest that, because it's all about food and coffee. Right, can I now ask you to thank formally the Minister for his excellent